Oh, hello. Welcome everyone. I am Catfish Franklin, and this here is Catfish Corner. And today's story is called uh, Old News featuring Stack O'Lee, episode 10, The Mad Riot. But before I get to that, I would just like to thank you for stopping by here on YouTube and hitting the thumbs ups and the comments and the likes and everything, subscribes. Thank you very much. And I would also like to thank my patrons over there on Patreon, including new patron Homesteader Jess. Thank you, Homesteader Jess, and welcome. And I'd also like to thank the people that support me over there on Give Butter, which is just like a donation thing. Now, today's story, episode 10, The Mad Riot. This is a rather interesting story. Questionable reporting here, but there is some interesting stuff. So this takes place on August 10th, 1897, and this is from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And content warning, there is a little bit of old-timey racist language in this article, and there's also topics of violence. So there's that. But, we're just going through the things that I've found Stack Lee doing. So this is one of them. Let's read about it, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit afterwards. August 10th, 1897, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Mad riot in the jail. Wave of hysteria passes through the place, and all prisoners attacked. Missiles hurled at guards. Dr. Baudouin explains the trouble better than does Butch Wagner. Due to this weather, prisoners now locked in dungeons, and all have been denied recreation or sight of friends. There was a hysterical uprising Monday night in the city jail. The police believe a conspiracy was hatched to effect a general delivery, but this appears to have no foundation in fact. In the melee, the guards were roughly handled, their clothing torn from them, their faces scratched, and their bodies bruised from the missiles hurled. Quote, I made no study of the disturbance last night in the jail, end quote, said Dr. J.K. Baudouin to a Post-Dispatch reporter. Quote, but I can imagine the conditions under which the prisoners were laboring, and in my judgment, their uprising may easily have been due to a nervous wave, superinduced by the irritable and almost unbearable weather. We have had almost continuous heat since the middle of June, and the weather has disturbed the nervous system of every person until even those who have every advantage of recuperation are well nigh exhausted. The hysterical cries of the women in jail constituted a firebrand to the inmates. By reason of their environment, they were in condition to respond promptly to a nervous wave. It became contagious. St. Vitus's dance once overran Europe from mere suggestion. I remember in my boyhood days a rebellion at Georgetown College. 2 or 3 unruly spirits started an uprising that was disastrous and far-reaching in its consequences. There had been no conspiracy, but when the riot began, it was quickly joined by 200 or 300 young men. Desks were smashed, windows broken, property destroyed, and the professors roughly handled. It lasted a week and had no valid cause or excuse. There are epidemics of homicide and suicide, occasioned by the weather and other conditions constituting a wave. The material is there, and all it needs is a firebrand in the shape of a rebellious suggestion. Another thing, prisoners are given to reading. They read every line in the newspapers about the assassination of canovas. That incident created what is known as a condition of latent potentiality, which only needed development. A suggestion in the shape of a woman's hysterical cry precipitated the rebellion. If there had been a conspiracy, it would have been shown by unmistakable evidences that now seem to be lacking. End quote. Tuesday morning, the interior of the jail looked as it did the day after the tornado. The bullpen was strewn with tin plates, broken cups, saucers, bottles, and other litter. Jailer Wagner declares the outbreak was due to meanness, and the prisoners took advantage of his being away on an excursion. As a result of their conduct, the 270 prisoners, male and female, have been deprived of the usual recreation hour, denied the permission to speak with their friends, and have been cut off from all the privileges formerly accorded them while maintaining good conduct. The trouble was started by Lucy Mitchell, a negress charged with robbery, who began to abuse matron Rosa Wilhelm when called to task for some infraction of the rules. This was about 7:30 in the evening. When the matron attempted to quiet her, she became violent and shrieked and cursed at the top of her voice. Murray and Netzer grappled with the woman, who fought savagely, biting, kicking, screaming and cursing. The men had all they could do to handle her, but finally landed her in the dungeon. Then they returned for Stella Brown. As soon as the cell door was opened, the woman brought down a piece of broken glass on his hand, slashing his fingers terribly. Chief Keeley, Detectives Williams and Gaffney, Sergeants Dawson and Meehan, and several patrolmen entered the jail. Their presence had a somewhat quieting effect on the prisoners, although the racket did not cease. Among the ringleaders incarcerated in the dungeons, where they will remain for 24 hours, are Stack Lee, Henry Clay, Henry and Bud Hodgins, all murderers, Harry Hawkins, Stella Ann, Lucy Mitchell, Nanny Walker, and Mary Brooks. The end. So, this is a very bizarre article. Most of it is just a quote from this doctor who said in the beginning he made no study of the incident, but he was just speaking in generalities and speculation. Although, it kind of makes sense what he said. But there are some interesting things in here, like this Canovas, when he says that they read every detail about this in the paper. So that guy was the Prime Minister of Spain, and he was assassinated on August 8th, 1897, 2 days before this article we just read, which was August 10th, 1897, which means that, and the riot itself was the night of the 9th, and since the murder was on the 8th, it probably showed up in the papers on the 9th, and that evening was the riot. So that's interesting. Also, this speak of a tornado. There was a giant tornado that ripped through St. Louis, and I believe East St. Louis also, May 27th, 1896. So over a year before what we're reading about today. But after Stack Lee killed William Lyons, less than a year after, but it was after that, so it's in this timeline. There was a giant tornado that ripped through town. Wikipedia says it was the third deadliest and the most costly in U.S. history. And there is one photo, and it looks just like a giant section of town is just completely leveled off into the distance. It's just rubble. So it looks like it was pretty bad. So they're comparing the jail cell, or the jail after this riot. They say it looks like that. So that's kind of just interesting and places it in time also. And then another thing is this Henry Clay fellow, who they mention as one of the ringleaders incarcerated in the dungeons, in solitary, I guess, along with Stack Lee. And we know that at least that's the same name of a guy, if it's not the same guy, from episode 3, The Early Crimes. Henry Clay was a guy who Stack Lee pistol whipped him and fractured his skull in Nat Shelton's saloon. Now, Nat Shelton, I have not been able to find out if he's related to Lee Shelton, Stack Lee, but it seems sometimes like it could be his father, but I don't know. I haven't found any evidence of that. So, but they were at Nat Shelton's saloon, and this Henry Clay guy. And one of the two articles, I don't remember if it was this Post-Dispatch or the Globe Democrat, said it was over a craps game. So that's interesting. And that incident was in 1894. The pistol whipping, skull cracking incident, 1894. But then this Henry Clay guy, if it's the same guy, he shows up again here. He's in jail with Stack. So the other thing really is that nothing in this article indicates a conspiracy. They don't say why they suspected any of those people of being ringleaders, other than Lucy Mitchell, who is the lady who started shrieking originally, and then Stella Brown, the one who slashed one of the officer's fingers with broken glass. They don't say her name at the end, but those are the only two that seemed like they had anything to do with anything. The only two crimes, I guess you could say, that were, mentioned specifically, other than just general rioting, I suppose. But I do kind of understand what that doctor was saying. If it's been that hot for 2 months, they're in the city jail, it's probably pretty hot in there, and I can see how a nervous wave could come through like that, and I don't know that the people would really be riled up by the assassination of the Spanish Prime Minister. I don't know that that would get them upset, really. Maybe it would. But I can definitely see this heat thing as being something that could cause some sort of mass hysteria, as they put it. So, I have no idea what it means. What do I know? I'm just a guy, but this is the stuff that we're reading about. That's what it says. So, again, it's unclear really why Stack Lee is even in this story. I mean, I guess he took part in the riot and everything, but they don't say anything about him, except that they suspect him of being a ringleader. So, I don't know, is maybe this the kind of the beginning of his legend already starting to grow, before he's even put in sentenced to prison? Because at this point, he still, I believe, is just being held. He has not been sentenced to prison yet. He still hasn't been sentenced for the crime of murdering Billy Lyons. So that's where we're at, episode 10, The Mad Riot. So I'll be back soon with some more. There's still a few more good things, and some more songs too, so thanks again, everybody. I sure appreciate it. That's going to be it for story time. So be good out there, and I'll see you next time.